Yeah, so we are live. So I want to start by apologizing for everybody posting that, oh, it's 8 minutes now, it's 7 minutes now. You guys, we are finally here. Mrs. O here. Welcome to Mrs. O's chat room. Welcome to my YouTube channel. And you guys, wherever you are, clap your hand and welcome Mr. Olu. This is not the first time he's been here anyway, so it's both of us that own this channel. So Olu, please introduce yourself. I'm sure everybody knows you, and I would dive straight into what we want to talk about.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you from wherever you're joining us from across the world. My name is Olu at Olufemiloye on Twitter and on Instagram, and some of you also call me Olu of Canada. I've been in Canada. It's going to be 8 years this year. Now that I mentioned that, it feels like yesterday. I came in 2015 myself as an international student for my master's degree, but I've had the opportunity and privilege of transitioning from a student to a PR and now to a Canadian citizen.
Wow.
I enjoy sharing information with people about life in Canada so that people can learn from us and avoid some of the mistakes we made when we came here. So, looking forward to the session today where we'll be talking about the provincial nominee programs and
Yep.
how people can leverage those opportunities to come to Canada as well.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys, I keep bringing Olu because Olu is one of the realest person that I know. I mean, social media, you meet all kind of people sharing information. We don't know what they do behind the door. So I kind of just want to go with someone that I trust, you know, especially with all these things going around now, with all these fake consultants and very funny things. So you guys stay safe out there, by the way. Hopefully we'll touch on that as well before we leave today. But we're going to talk about provincial nomination. So why I'm interested in this provincial nomination is the fact that we know the numbers are, the highest amongst all of the pathways like express entry and every other pathway. Why is that so? I mean, I'm not supposed to be asking you that question only because I mean you're not the government of Canada, but it's very interesting that the numbers are high for this year. It's not been like that,
No,
previous
it
years,
hasn't.
right?
It hasn't.
So just, I mean, what do you want to say about what do you have to say about
I
that?
mean, it's evidence of the realities in Canada. Some provinces are more populated than others. The economic situation in some provinces, in terms of like shortages of skills and
Mhm.
all that,
Yeah.
the issues are much more in some places than other. The
Yeah.
housing situation as well, if you go to some certain provinces, I don't want to put names out there, you see what the prices of renting and buying houses
Yeah.
looks like compared to other places. And it makes sense that we are able to redistribute this population as Canada
Mm.
leverages the immigrant population to increase the population. It's also very, very important to reduce the pressure on some popular provinces and redistribute that to some other places. And those would be the reasons or the ideas behind like having
Mhm.
larger quota for provincial nominee programs compared to
Mhm.
other economic programs in Canada.
Yeah.
The
Because
Canadian
provincial
permanent,
nominations are more specific.
they
It
are
trickles
specific,
down to like a group of people when they're looking
exactly.
for a group of
And then
people.
you have like the specific parts of the countries that they want you to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, Canada's permanent residence program is an economic program.
Mm-hmm.
60% of new permanent residents in Canada are under the economic category. People who have skilled work experience from back home or in Canada, people who have education, people who have, even if it's like blue collar jobs,
Mm-hmm.
carpenters, welders, and all that, that can bring
Mm-hmm.
those experience and expertise into Canada. And it helps these provinces to develop their economy and all that. So I'm going to speak on like the three reasons why provincial nominee programs even come to exist in the first place. Number
Mm-hmm.
one, like we mentioned, is for economic reason. You know, the ability to get skilled workers into those different parts of the countries that if people have the choice to make a choice of where to go, they may not really choose
Yeah.
places. Not because they are bad, but because economic activities are much more pronounced in some places than other. The
Mm-hmm.
second reason is for population, like we said, to redistribute population and get people to other parts of Canada, reduce pressure on some parts. And the third one would be for integrative purpose, so that when you move to those provinces, You are not just moving there, you are establishing yourself there. And
Yeah.
it helps you, it helps other family members. You find out that one of the things that is very popular right now is that some provinces would even reward applicants that are applying for provincial nominee programs if they have relatives in those
Families.
places,
True.
because they believe that would help them settle in and stay back in those places. So
Hmm.
those would be like the reasons.
Yeah, that make a lot of sense. So, Olu, before we go forward, I just want you to talk a bit about what, just for the sake of people who are hearing provincial nomination for the first time, because when I put PMP, people are saying, "What is PMP?"
What's yeah.
You know, provincial nomination. You will know once you see PMP, you know it's provincial nomination program. So, what
Mhm.
is provincial nomination and how does it work?
As the name implies, provincial PMP is provincial nominee programs. It means a province is nominating you and supporting you to become a permanent resident in Canada with the hope that you would reside in that province. Now,
Mm-hmm.
there are reasons or exceptions as to why you may not or in the future have to like leave the province and all that, but
Mm-hmm.
generally you're expected to reside in that province until at least you're eligible for Canadian citizenship. For a lot of people who come into Canada directly as permanent residents, you only need 3 years of accumulated stay in Canada after becoming a permanent resident to be eligible for Canadian citizenship. After that duration, if you decide to leave, then it's optional. You can decide to leave, but that's the idea behind that. The
Mm-hmm.
permanent residence program in Canada itself is governed and administered by the government of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Provinces don't give you visas, but they
Yeah.
can nominate you and say, the government of Canada, we've nominated this individual. We want them to reside in our province. Once you process the application and approve their PR, then they can come into our province. So that's what provincial nominee program is about, and the idea behind that. In terms of how it works, I personally have categorized provincial nominee programs into three different categories in terms of how it works. Number one is that for people who are familiar with the Express Entry program, there are
Yeah.
provincial nominee programs that are aligned with the Express Entry program. For those that are hearing of the Express Entry for the first time, the Express Entry is Canada's flagship permanent residence program. It's a point-based system for people who have good education, high education, good work experience, can pass their
Mm-hmm.
language test very well. And for that, they do a draw bi-weekly or thereabout to invite people.
Mm-hmm.
If you get express entry, you're really not confined to a particular province. You can live anywhere. But one of the avenues that the government has provided for the express entry is that if you calculate your score and your express entry score is low, you can seek a nomination in a province. And if you are nominated, it will give you 600 additional points. If you're nominated through an express entry aligned PMP, you get your 600 points. You add it to your express entry score. They do a draw, you are invited, you apply for PR. That's the category one. The category two are provincial nominee programs that are not aligned with express entry. What that
Mm-hmm.
means is that if you are nominated under that category in any province, you don't need to have an express entry profile. You don't need to
Mm-hmm.
have an express entry score. That is beneficial for people. Maybe your age is high, your level of education is low, your language test is low. You do not even have enough to get into the express entry pool, and you're seeking direct nomination. When you are
Mm-hmm.
nominated under that category, there's no 600 points adding to an express entry score because you don't even have one.
Okay.
Once you're nominated, you put your application together, you apply for permanent residency.
Mm.
You're approved, you go to the province. The third category that is also very, very popular is the student category of nomination. You find out that in many provinces, there are student categories of nominations specifically designed for people who have studied in those provinces. And that's why I tell people when I'm talking about like the plans to make when you're coming to study in Canada, I talk about like your study plan to know the
Yeah.
program to do. I talk about the career plan to know the job you want to do with that education you're doing
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Canada. And I talk about your personal exit plan, your immigration plan,
Sure.
knowing your options right from the time you're choosing your program to look at would I need a nomination which province would be more beneficial for me, because student categories of nominations and the requirements also vary from province to province. But that's how it works. Either you're doing an express entry aligned to get 600 additional points and add to your express entry score, or you're doing a non-express entry aligned after nomination applying directly for PR, or you're doing a student category of nomination.
Hmm. That's clearly stated. So three, I mean, Olu personally has classified it into three categories, and that make a lot of sense. So you guys, I don't think there's any way you get provincial nomination outside of these three categories that Olu has mentioned. So I'm going to skip the second question I wanted to ask you because you already talked about it. So I'll stick to that type of provincial nomination. I mean, different provinces will have different provincial nomination, but all of them are categorized under these three, subtopics that Olu has mentioned.
Right.
So I mean, which of this provincial nomination is relatively easy, based on the requirements?
I am a proud prairie boy, Saskatchewan boy. I would say Saskatchewan will always be like my top on the list. It's
Mm,
something I'm very, very familiar with, and I've been a beneficiary of by being able to nominate, family members or support the nomination of like family members and
mhm,
close relatives. There are probably about 4 or 5 provinces that I typically recommend for people
mhm,
to check out. But like I said, number one is Saskatchewan. Why Saskatchewan? Because it's straightforward. Saskatchewan is one of those provinces that you can directly set up an expression of interest for and apply for nomination. As long as you meet the requirements, your education, your work experience, your language test, you have all those things ready, you can set up an expression of interest in Saskatchewan and say, I am interested in being nominated. Why do I like Saskatchewan so much? It's also one of those provinces where if you have a family member in Saskatchewan, you get additional points.
mm.
The points for relative in Saskatchewan is 20 points. You need at least 60 over 100 to be eligible. But having a relative alone gives you 20 points,
Wow.
which is
Yeah,
very, very beneficial for a lot of people.
yeah.
To get that, your chances of like getting nominated has increased. If you
Mm,
don't have a relative, it doesn't mean you can't apply to Saskatchewan. It just means that you won't get that 20 additional points. But if you have other things, you calculate your points, just do a Google search of like Saskatchewan nomination eligibility. You see those points that have been assigned to like age, work experience, language test, education, and those other things. As long as you have 60 over 100, you're eligible to set up your expression of interest for Saskatchewan. The one other thing I also like about Saskatchewan is that they have the student category of nomination, which is quite beneficial for a lot of people who have studied at a post-secondary institution in Saskatchewan. The popular thing about that is that when you complete your education, you only need 6 months of work experience in Saskatchewan to be eligible for the student category of nomination. Before we came on for this live session, I had to go and check the processing time for that student nomination, and it's just 1 week. So if
wow.
you have 6 months of experience after your study, you apply for nomination, all your documents are correct, you get it in about 1 week.
Oh,
Once you
that's
get your
nice. But you
nomination,
must study in Saskatchewan. It
you
can't be
must study
anywhere
in
in Canada.
Saskatchewan. Exactly. You must
So it
study.
doesn't matter if it's masters, PGD,
It
whatever.
doesn't matter. And that's one of the
You
benefits.
guys, are you hearing this thing?
It could be certificates, it could be anything
Wow, that's
that you
nice.
studied at a designated learning institution in Saskatchewan. And this is quite beneficial for a lot of people that are coming for 1 year programs, you
Mm-hmm.
know, getting just 1 year post
Yeah,
graduation permit.
yeah.
You are in a race against time. And if you can get a job, do 6 months, you get your nomination, you're good to go.
Hmm.
And once you submit an application for PR, you are eligible for the Bridging Open Work Permit, which allows you to keep
Yeah.
working until your PR, a decision is made on your PR program. That's why you see people going to places like Saskatchewan. The second
Hmm.
province I'll touch on briefly, because you can also apply directly to them, is Manitoba. So Manitoba also has something quite close to Saskatchewan. They offer points even for family relatives and friends. That's
Hmm.
where Manitoba is better than Saskatchewan. If you have friends that you can prove sufficiently that your friends, you've known each other for some time, they have PR or citizens or as citizens in Manitoba, they can be your Manitoba support to support your nomination in Manitoba. Every other thing is quite similar to Saskatchewan. For people that have studied there, they have various streams for those that are educated in Manitoba or people educated outside Manitoba and all that. And they have the general one also for skilled workers that are applying, whether from other provinces in Canada or applying from outside Canada. So that's Manitoba. If you need additional information on that, just do a Google search of MPNP. So that's Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program. You can read as much as possible information on their official website to get what you need. The the next province I will talk about in terms of like ease is Alberta. But the way Alberta Provincial Nominee Program works is that it's much more beneficial for people that have an express entry profile because they go directly into the express entry pool to give people what we call notification of interest and invite them and say, we've looked at your profile, you look like who we are looking for, come and apply for nomination in our province. It means you can apply to them directly if you're
Oh.
doing the express entry category. And that's why we advise people that when you're setting up your express entry profile, there's one question that would ask you which province is your destination in Canada. Instead of choosing just one province, you can choose all provinces.
Yeah.
When you choose all provinces, it makes you open to any province that goes into the pool to invite people. Best part about that of Alberta is that the minimum CRS score to be eligible, if they go into the pool and you fit what they're looking for, is just 300. So
Wow.
just 300, you are in the pool. Alberta can see your profile. Mostly they nominate based on occupations that are in demand in their province. Like I mentioned, it's an economic program. They
Yep.
want you to bring your skills, your experience to their province and support you. So if you are able to get that and you're nominated, you get 600 bonus points. They also have different other streams that they've opened up. And one of the things that Alberta announced recently is that they want to start doing like Manitoba and Saskatchewan, where they also nominate people who have family members in Alberta. They just announced that a couple of days ago, which would be much more beneficial. And in addition to that, they have other streams like the Alberta Tech Pathway for people in the tech industry that are able to get a job in Alberta. They have a very popular one that is the religious pathway for people who are, clergymen or, religious individuals in Alberta and those other ones. If you want to know more about Alberta, do a Google search, Alberta PNP. It will take you to their website. You see all other information and streams that are available. Ontario will be the next one. And the reason why I like Ontario is that a lot of people also like Ontario. And Ontario is Canada's most populated province.
Yeah.
It's also like the economic hub of the country. Alberta, Ontario has different streams for different categories of individual. One of the popular ones are the master's and PhD streams under the student category. If you do a master's program or a PhD in Ontario, you can express interest to apply under the master's graduate stream or the PhD stream of the Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program. We call it OIMP. If you do a Google search of OIMP, Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program, you also see those information. In addition to that, Ontario is also one of those provinces that go directly into the express entry pool, just like Alberta, to invite people and issue them notification of interest. The difference from Alberta is that they don't go as low as 300. Most times they call 400 and something in the express entry pool, 450, 460, sometimes even as high as 480. So they do not go. I've never seen them go lesser than 400. So if your CRS score is high, you're in the express entry pool, you open up your profile, Ontario can go there and nominate you. For people who are doing programs that are not masters and PhD students in Ontario, they also have the employer job offer international student stream. The only difference is that unlike the master's and PhD stream that you can express your interest, you don't need a job offer. For those other categories, you need to get a job offer. And there are specific requirements of what the job offers should look like. Once you are able to get that, you can also apply for nomination in Ontario. They also have the skilled workers stream that is for some jobs that are not eligible for express entry. To apply for express entry, your job must be tier 0, 1,
Mm-hmm.
2, or 3. But they have for like tier 4 and tier 5 jobs, like personal support worker is one that is very, very popular. If you get a job as a personal support worker in Ontario, we can do that in-demand skill stream where you can use those jobs that are not even eligible for express entry to apply for nomination in Ontario as
But
well.
Olu, when you're applying for a nomination in Ontario, you apply straight to the government, not through the express entry.
It's in two categories. The human capital priority stream is the one they go into the express entry pool to
Mm-hmm.
invite people, just like Alberta. You don't
Mm-hmm.
apply for that. They invite you. You submit a nomination application to them. After you've been invited, you get
Mm-hmm.
your nomination, you get 600 points. It has to your express entry score.
Oh, okay.
But the other ones that are not human capital priorities, like the master graduate stream, the PhD graduate stream, the employer job offer international student stream, the in-demand skill stream, and all those ones, you can set up your expression of interest and apply directly to the province as long as you meet the specific requirements of those
And
programs.
then when you get the nomination, you apply to federal, or
You
you now get.
apply to federal. You apply to
Okay, so
federal
it's
because
just like the Saskatchewan one.
occupation in demand one in Saskatchewan where you don't need
Yeah.
an express entry profile.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
The final province that will make my top 5, I've mentioned Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, Ontario. The final province that will make my top 5, and it doesn't mean that other provinces do not have nomination process. They are just like my top 5. There are 10 provinces in Canada and 3 territories, and almost all of them have different nominee programs, different requirements. But the fifth one I would mention is New Brunswick. And the reason why I like New Brunswick is that even though their own nomination process, the general one, requires you to get a job offer, they are very intentional about that job offer. They do international recruitment exercise where they travel to different parts of the world, or sometimes they do it online. I saw Mrs. O posted it a couple of days ago. If you missed
Yeah.
that, go check out on our Instagram page or Twitter. They are currently doing an international recruitment exercise right now. Once you have your education credential assessment, your language test, sometimes they may ask you to have an express entry profile.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's optional, but you can always join or apply for that international recruitment
Yeah.
exercise. People go the length of like going to other countries where they are hosting it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know a time when they were doing it, I think in Dubai or something, that
Yeah.
some people traveled to Dubai and
Yeah.
were lucky enough to get that.
Yeah.
The reason why that is so beneficial is that when they do those international recruitment exercise, they are also recruiting you for companies in New Brunswick.
Yeah.
When you get that job offer, you can actually use that to apply for a work permit to
Mm-hmm.
come to Canada to start your work while your PR is being
It's
processed.
ongoing. Yeah.
In addition to those international recruitment exercise, they also have student categories of nomination. And as a matter of fact, New Brunswick is the only province in Canada where they have a certain student nomination process that you do not need to have completed your program before you apply.
Mm-hmm.
Once you are very close to completing your program in New Brunswick, you meet the other requirements of that specific student category, you can
Mm-hmm.
apply for nomination in New Brunswick. So those would be my top 5. In other provinces, British Columbia, we also have PMP. They have one that is very, very popular, the BC PMP, Tech PMP, for people in the tech industry, where they nominate people specifically in certain tech occupations. You can check that out. In Newfoundland and Labrador, they have nomination process. They have international student stream as well. In Nova Scotia, they have provincial nomination process. They have international student stream and all that as well. Even in places like Prince Edward Island and all those other provinces. In Quebec, there's this Quebec Select Skilled Worker Program. You'll find all these programs in different provinces with their different requirements. I'm just going to pause here right now.
Olu, thank you so much. You've touched on everything. I don't even need to continue asking questions. So I'll just follow up with the questions that I think you've touched on everything. But I will just let you talk about the requirements, on a general, basis? Because people are asking, oh, do you need IELTS for, because the way you categorize, those three categories, I like the way you categorize that. And I think it's really easy to follow with the way you categorize them. So are there requirements for each of these
General
categories?
requirements, yes. So general requirements in most cases, of course, for any PR program you're applying for in Canada, you need a language test, except you are being sponsored as a spouse of a PR
Yeah.
or a citizen. Any other thing you're applying for directly yourself, you need a language test. You have to write that, and you're doing the general training, whether IELTS or CELPIP or the French test in TCF or TEF. Yes, you need that. You also need your education credential assessment for educations or degrees that you earned from outside Canada.
Mm-hmm.
You earned a bachelor's degree from outside Canada or a master's degree or what have you, you need to um, evaluate that with any of the popular educational credential assessment organizations and get that ready. Those two things, you need them for any PR program you're applying for in Canada. The third one that is also a general requirement is the work experience. Depending on the province you're applying to or the category of nomination, some of them may say you must have specific work experience in certain occupations that are in demand in their province. So any province you want to apply to, check their website, do some search on the occupations that are in demand in those provinces, check their nomination website to be sure that your work experience, your NOC, National Occupation Classification, fits within what they have. I'm going to give you an example like Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan has an excluded occupation list.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is that even if you meet everything, you have a relative and everything, and your job is on that excluded list, it means you are not eligible. It
Yeah.
means they are not accepting your occupation. So those are the things to keep in mind. And finally, for provinces where you require a job offer, the general requirement, if you're applying to a province where it is mandatory to get a job offer, would be to start looking for those job offer in places like New Brunswick, leveraging the opportunities through their international recruitment to apply for job and connect with employers. I'm seeing a question now for emphasis sake. Any PR program you're applying for, it has to be general training of IELTS or CELPIP or what have you. So if you've done academics in the past, you can't use that for PR applications.
Okay, so Olu, you didn't talk about age. How does age come into play, with all of
Very
these
good
provincial?
question. So in a lot of those other provinces, provincial nominee programs are beneficial for people who are of high ages. That's one of the things that make it an appealing process. Unlike the express entry where you start losing points significantly once you cross like 30, 31, on and that. In all those other provinces, in a place like Saskatchewan, for instance, they also have points they assign to ages, but it's not something that would significantly affect your points.
Hmm.
That's why earlier on when I mentioned, I said the reason why some people look for nomination is because maybe they can't get into the express entry pool. Maybe their age is too high. Maybe their language test is low. So similarly to the age is the language test. If your language test is low, if you look at most provinces, you see that their language test requirements is much more lower than the express entry. They can say maybe just have like a CLB 5 or CLB 6. If you're doing the in-demand skill category in Ontario, for instance, you don't need to get up to like CLB 9. As low as like maybe CLB 6 or 7 would be enough for you in your language test. And that's why people look for nominations so that they can complement for the points if they're doing express entry that they've lost as a result of their high age or their low language test score.
Hmm. Wow. Okay, guys, I think Olu have touched on everything. I have a scenario-based question that somebody sent on my Instagram page. So I'll just
Okay.
no, I've not even gone through the question, but let me just read it. This is the first time I'm reading it. So in case it doesn't make sense, please. So she said she has a concern. I would like you to address it on the YouTube session on Sunday. For someone like myself, she's in her late 30s and she doesn't have enough funds for the study route, high probability of visa rejection. So what provincial nomination can I explore? I am asking because my research hasn't provided any good news where provincial nomination is concerned. Manitoba requests for family ties in province, which I do not have. Saskatchewan insists on education, work experience match. Ontario picks from the pool based on their preference.
Mhm.
Quebec also picks on occupation in demand in their province. While to the best of my knowledge, New Brunswick and some other request one has a job offer. You must have a job offer before experiencing interest in their province. So, and I need, she said the whole thing has been exhausting and I need guidance. I've learned French, but passing the exam hasn't been a walk in the park. Are there PMP options that can come through for someone like me? This one might look for another route.
I mean, the person that's touched on like the basic requirements, like we mentioned, it varies from province to province.
Yeah.
I would say in that case, maybe look at a place like New Brunswick, even though it requires a job offer. Like I mentioned earlier, they have provided that leeway for people to connect
Yeah.
employers through them. Sign
Yeah.
up for their international recruitment exercise.
Mm-hmm.
If you get that, you're good to go. Also, for emphasis sake, in Saskatchewan, it is not mandatory to have a relative. It just gives you more points. People
Mm-hmm.
have gotten nomination in Saskatchewan even without having relatives. Calculate what your CRS score looks like. Calculate what your SIMP eligibility points looks like. If you're up to at least 60, it gets you to be able to express interest in Saskatchewan. You just have to hope that, number one, they pick your occupation or they pick the cutoff that you're interested in. But outside of those, it's a matter of like what you are able to intensify efforts and do. You
Mm-hmm.
understand? All those other provinces that are even looking for job offer, I don't know the occupation or profession of that individual. People get job offers for BCPMP from outside Canada, even some places inside Canada. You understand? And also BC also has something that is related to the in-demand skill in Ontario, where even the jobs they nominate are like tier 4 and tier 5 jobs, that are not even eligible for express entry. So I'm sure if you look deeper, consider your options, you're intentional about some of those things that, if you say, for instance, Manitoba, I don't have a relative, strike it off your list. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing you can do about that. But look at those other places and make up your mind on what you can intensify efforts and follow through with. And then, and even for study route, for instance, there are scholarship options in different parts, of the country. It depends on what you have in terms of like grade, the program you're going for. If your preference is to go for a course-based program and you don't have the money to pay for it, then you may want to look for a research-based program that is close to that, that would get you the funding and relieve you of the financial implications of the program you want to come for as well.
Thank you, Lu. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I understand that not everybody might still qualify through, for this pathway. So you look for other pathways. But again, if express entry is not doing it for you, I think provincial nomination is a good one because you have the opportunity of getting some nominations without a job offer, unlike things like RNIP. I saw someone saying that we didn't talk about RNIP, all those kind of, or AIP. Those ones are,
There are
there's no
different programs.
there's no there's no other way around it. You must have a job. But
Mhm.
with the provincial nomination, there are some provincial nomination programs that do not require a job offer, and you don't have to have relatives everywhere. If you do, it's a plus for you, but it's still, I mean, that's the best, that's your best option. So you have to keep digging in, right? So I'll just quickly take questions, and we don't want this session to stretch so long. So any question that Olu has touched on, I will just reiterate and then we'll move over to the next one. So the people who came early, someone says, can you come for one occupation in demand? For example, can you come in as a farmer and later you change to other occupation in demand, like into tech in provincial nomination?
It's possible. So that's a very, very good question. You are not mandated, or it's not compulsory to remain in the same profession that you were nominated for. So if you got your nomination through being a farmer and then you got to Canada, you're in the province, you saw other opportunities to transition into other jobs, nothing stops you from doing that.
So
So
even without collecting your citizen, you can do it like,
yes,
okay,
yes. Without as long as you remain in that province,
province.
your
Okay.
if you come in and let's say by the time your application is approved, farmers are no longer in demand. Nobody will say you should not do any job, any other job. So
True,
that's
true.
what.
Yeah, they don't hold you onto whatever profession it is that you came in with, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would go down. Someone says, so does the second cat? Okay, you've answered this question. So for the person asking this question, Olu says for every of the routes,
Mhm.
PMP, whatever it is, you have to go through IELTS general. So someone is asking this question. So when you talked about the relation in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and also this Alberta that was just announced, does it have to be like relative by blood? I don't know
That's a
what
very
this
good
means.
question. They have categories of the relatives that they choose. I'm trying to
Okay.
see if I can pull out the one for Saskatchewan quickly. So, a close family relative in Saskatchewan only includes your parents, sibling, grandparents, aunt, uncle, niece, nephew, first cousin, or a step family member or in law of the same relationship. So, you have to
Oh,
check the specific province to know what they accept as relative. Like I
mm-hmm.
mentioned, so this is for Saskatchewan. In Manitoba, they also accept friends. In Manitoba, you can't use friend in Saskatchewan, for instance. In Alberta, that they just recently announced, they've not provided additional information for us to know who would be that family relative. But it's a matter of like checking the specific province to know what or the categories of individuals they accept. So Saskatchewan's own, for instance, is a long list: uncle, aunties, niece, nephew,
Yeah.
first cousins. As long as you can prove those relationships, those are the ones.
But what kind of proof can people provide to
A
show
lot
that?
of documents, people draw family trees, they present like maybe birth certificates of their parents that shows the same grandparents, they draw family tree. If they have
Like you can draw
pictures,
the family tree yourself. It's not
yeah,
as if
you
there's
draw it.
a
You draw it
okay.
and then label it so that they can
That's
trace it,
serious.
and then you provide those other documents like birth certificates showing maybe the same parents of the applicants and your own parents and those other things, family pictures at events and all those other things are some of the things
Nice.
to present. Yeah.
Okay, okay, that's nice. Someone is saying, is there a way they can skip IELTS?
For PR, we already mentioned maybe if you are the spouse of a Canadian PR or citizen, that's when you say they are sponsoring you. So you are not applying yourself, you are being sponsored as a spouse of a PR or citizen. You don't need to write IELTS for that.
So someone is asking this question. I don't know if I'm supposed to shoot this question because I'm not sure you mentioned about having relatives in Nova Scotia will help you
No,
get
no.
there's no program like that for Nova Scotia. So your siblings might just help you with the federal skilled workers to get that extra 15 points for
15
that.
points. Yeah.
So I don't know which of these programs can someone above 45 years of age. So provincial nominations, do they have any restriction on age? Like is there any age that you will get to that a province will not nominate you?
It depends on also the province. So in Saskatchewan, for instance, on their own points grid, they have points for ages. It drops
Oh,
as you grow older, but as
hmm.
long as you still meet that average of 60, you can express your interest. In
Oh,
other
nice.
places like Ontario and all that, it's not really a big issue. In Manitoba, they also have a point grid. As long as you still meet the minimum to set up their expression of interest, you're good to go as well.
Yeah, I mean, they don't want to get people that will come here and they're already retired at the age where they are retiring, right? So it makes sense that there is a cutoff with the age. Okay, so does the provincial nomination select only people in oh, okay, people whose job are in demand?
I mean, we've touched on like the different It's a combination of factors.
Yeah.
For some provinces, they have the jobs they are particular about. For some, they prioritize family, relatives, and all that. So it's going to depend on the specific province you're looking at. For some, they just need you to get a job offer that is eligible for their program, and you can apply.
So someone is asking, can you use West evaluation of more than 2 years for provincial nomination?
Yes, you can. So evaluation is valid for 5 years. As long as you're applying within the duration of when your evaluation is valid, you can still apply. So 2 years, you still have 3 more years on your evaluation and you can use
Yeah. Can someone get a job through visitation to relatives already residing in Canada? It's not impossible.
Very good question. If you come to Canada on a visiting visa and you get an eligible job offer that you can use to apply for work permit, there's a policy in place right now until February 2023 next month. We don't know if they would extend it, but it was one of those policies that came into place during the peak of
Oh,
COVID,
yeah.
and they've extended it that you don't need to leave Canada to apply for work permit. So if you come in, you get a job offer, you get an employer ready to get you the LMIA document and all those other documents, you can apply for your work visa.
Yeah, and even if let's assume that they've closed up the program. I mean, if you get a job, you can always leave the country and
You
still
leave the
apply.
country and apply for your work visa. Yes.
Yeah. So okay, this person says, I understand experience must match with education in Saskatchewan. Is that still valid?
Yes, that's still valid. So Saskatchewan expects you to have education that is related to your work experience. You understand? So if you are claiming work experience as a, let's say, a financial analyst, you must have a related education to that. It
Wow.
doesn't used to be like that before, but maybe they started thinking people are making some adjustment to
Picking
what
up
they feel
their, yeah.
and all those
Wow.
things. But that's still the case in Saskatchewan right now.
Wow. But other provinces don't do that.
No, no.
Hmm. Is it better to apply directly to just one province due to low CRS? Before you answer this question, Olu, are there provinces that you, when you're applying for a provincial nomination, you can't apply double, like you can't be applying to Saskatchewan and Manitoba, because I've
That's a
gotten
very good
that
question.
question.
Yes. So there are some provinces that would ask you if you've expressed interest in other provinces and deduct some points for that. An example is Manitoba. Manitoba does that. I'm very sure of Manitoba. They would ask you if you've expressed interest or applied for nomination in other province. Because what the rationale behind that is that what it speaks to them is that you are not really about their province. We
Yes, you're
know,
trying your luck.
even in Manitoba, like if you have relatives in other provinces, like close relatives, like maybe like your sibling, I think they ask you for that. If you've studied
Wow.
in another province, you're in Canada, you've studied in another province, you now move to Manitoba, you want to apply for nomination, they deduct some points for that as well. But I know that specifically for Manitoba.
Ah, those ones are jealous. They want you to be fully and wholly for Manitoba. Okay, so I don't know if you want to take this question. Is it better to apply directly to just one province due to low CRS or express entry and select numerous province?
I mean,
I think it's
nothing stops
straightforward.
you from doing that. Once you're in the express entry pool, you open up your profile to all provinces. If they go in and pick you, fine. But if before they go in and pick you, you apply to another province and get a nomination, you're good to go.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think both of them are mutually, they don't,
They don't affect each other.
exactly. Yeah. So this person says, hello, sir. At what point do we get to present proof of funds for provincial nomination program?
At the point when you're submitting your application for nomination, not expressing interest, depending on the province you're applying to, I'm going to use Saskatchewan as an example. Saskatchewan requires you to have your proof of fund intact for 90 days before you submit an application for nomination, not expressing interest. You can be in the expression of interest pool for Saskatchewan before they nominate you. When they invite you, they give you 60 days to submit your full application. As of the time you're submitting that full application, your proof of fund must have been intact for 90 days.
Hmm.
Other provinces don't have that requirement. So for them, it means that it is when you're submitting your full application, whether it's the one that will go into the express entry pool to invite you, whether it's the one you're applying to directly, when you're submitting that full application, you must show that proof of fund. But for Saskatchewan, as of the time you're submitting that full application, your proof of fund must have been intact for
Mhm.
90 days before submission.
So it means that even whilst you're expressing interest, you
You
should
should
already have the money because you
already
only
have
get
the money
60
ready
days, which is not
because
up to
you get
90
60
days.
days, which is not up to 90. So
Yeah, I've gotten people who lost their,
and there are
their
some particular
opportunity
about
because of,
that. Even if it's just a few weeks to 90 days, like they are so particular about that. Yeah.
hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Um, what should my knock in the express entry be the same if I am applying for Saskatchewan?
Very good question. 100% yes. So
Yeah.
if you are using the express entry route, your national occupation classification for your job must be the same with the one they are nominating you for. So that's a very good question.
Okay, I don't want to show this question because again, you have to go and check the
Please.
excluded occupations. Um, can I still get a high CRS score in the express entry pool with only a bachelor's if I meet other requirements, or must I have a master's degree?
Do a CRS calculator and calculate your CRS score.
Yeah.
The CRS score is not just about your education, it's also like your language test, the work experience you have, and those other things. If you calculate, the thing that a master's degree does is that it gives you more points than a BSc. But
Hmm.
calculate your CRS score with all the things you have, whether you have a sibling in Canada, and add that up, you will see yourself what your CRS score is compared to the cutoff they're using for draws recently. And then that helps you to determine your chance, or if you need to work to increase your score. The good thing is that even with what you have, as long as you're eligible to get into the express entry pool, you can set up your profile. If you get other things that will increase your score, you can always update your profile anytime you have those things.
Hmm. Okay, so I'll shoot this question because I mean, for this person and everybody that has this kind of question,
Mhm.
Olu, what are you going to say to them? Because the next time I see this kind of question, I'm going to pass it.
If you're in the express entry pool, your points is low. 355 right now is very low. You know, look for ways to increase your score. PMP is one of that. You know, if you
Yeah,
look
you don't
for
have
any
to wait.
province you are eligible for 600 points, you don't have to wait. Someone with 355 right now, your age is very good, so it's likely that your language test score was very low. That was why you had 355. Or you don't have enough up to like 3 years of work experience to max out the points for work experience. While you are in the pool, don't wait. I can't tell you authoritatively that cutoff will go as low as 355. For general draws, it has never happened. You understand? But while in the pool, look for different ways, whether it's PMP, whether it's writing your language test, whether it's looking for job offer, whether it's increasing your level of education to increase your score. But your age is very good. You're less than 30. You've maxed out the point for age.
Okay, so this person came in late. So she says, can she apply it for provincial nomination in Manitoba without having an express entry
That would
profile?
be their occupation in demand category, something related to the Saskatchewan, on which means when you are nominated, you are applying for a full PR and you don't need 600 points to add to your express entry score.
So Tayo is asking a question. And Tayo, you know the answer of this question.
Can I still put in for the PMP and the question called up? But the answer is yes. As a student, you don't have to wait until you complete your program before you apply for either express entry PR. As long as you are eligible, you can express your interest in the federal program or provincial nominee programs as well.
So we just have like 7 minutes to round up. Olo, I'm sorry. I know I told you 45 minutes, but again, because we started late.
Well,
So this question is for this person and any other person that has this kind of related question about, oh, I'm a farmer, I'm a fisherman, I'm a whatever,
mhm.
which province is best for me? So Olu, if you're in a particular, how do you even know what kind of, which province to go for based on your occupation?
Just do a Google search, occupations in demand in any province.
Yeah.
Truck drivers, for instance, they are very, very much in demand in almost any province I can
Yeah.
think of. I'm sure Ontario has a program for truck drivers specifically. I think in British Columbia, there's one as well. In Saskatchewan, they are also eligible for the PMP. Any province that you look up their requirement, because again, the nomination is not just, it's a combination of factors that they look at. But if you check any requirement based on your job, as long as your occupation is eligible to apply in that province, you can look at that. But look up all those other provinces I just mentioned specifically for truck drivers. Check their other requirements. As long as you meet those requirements, you can apply for them.
So this person says, how do we know the province websites? There's an official website. It's very easy to know.
Yeah, so just Google Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program. Just say Saskatchewan PMP. Put it on
Yeah.
Google. It will take you there. Alberta PMP. Put it on Google. Ontario PMP,
Yeah.
Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program. Just use those key search words and put it on, do a Google search. You would see their website where you can read more information.
So this person says, can a student already in Ontario apply for Manitoba provincial nomination because they have a sibling there? I think they can, but it's
I
just
can
that they will get deducted scores because they studied in
exactly
Ontario.
because I studied in Ontario. So Manitoba would deduct some points for studying outside the province. But if
Mm-hmm.
you have a sibling there already, you will get more points than what they would even deduct because your
Mm-hmm.
sibling is even a closer relative. As long as your sibling is a PR or a citizen in Manitoba.
Hmm. This one is saying, how do we register for province newsletter to be getting first-hand information?
Check their provincial website. Like we said, do a Google search, Saskatchewan PMP, Ontario PMP. If they have the um, if they have the option of registering for newsletter, you'll find it on their website as well.
So this person says, Tayo again says, as a student in Canada already, would I be violating my visa terms if I put in for provincial nomination? Okay, so answer this question for anybody thinking that whilst they are a student in Canada, they cannot apply for their permanent residency, provincial nomination, RNIP, whatever, whatever routes that you're going through.
They are
So
eligible for. I'm going to use myself as an example. I came in on initially a 2 years master's degree visa, and I was able to transition to PR before that 2 year visa expired. As an international student, you have the opportunity to transition. What was beneficial for me back then was the year I came was when Express Entry started. A lot of us got those information early enough, evaluated the degree we had from back home, used the work experience we had from back home and applied. The same thing is applicable here, except you are on a scholarship that requires you to go back home. You know,
Mhm,
there are some
mhm.
country scholarship you're being funded by your country or by a special organization that requires you to go back home upon the completion of your program. If you are
Hmm.
not under any obligation to return home after the completion of your program, you are not violating anything by putting in for express entry, by putting in for PMP in Canada.
So I think this question is something. So someone is saying, how often do Saskatchewan do their draw? So let's just ask a general question. How often do this provincial nomination draw happen?
It depends on the province. So for Saskatchewan, the last one they did was, I believe, December 21 or something. I think they strive to always do like 2 times in a month, sometimes once in a month. It depends on the province. Like those provinces that go into the pool to select people, it also depends on them. They may go every month, they may not go in 2 months, they may go in 3 months, kind of
Yeah,
thing. Also, like New Brunswick, where they do their international recruitment exercise, there's no specific timeline as to when
yeah, yeah,
that. But one thing I tell people is that be prepared, plan ahead, be prepared. Let those opportunities meet you
yeah.
very prepared. Have the documents you need, your ECA, your language test. If you need to set up an expression of interest in that province, if you need to get into the express entry pool and open up your profile, do those things in preparation for when those opportunities would come.
Yeah, and it's also important that whoever that on your social media, you're following people who can remind you of these things, right? Sometimes, like when I posted about the Ontario online recruitment for New Brunswick, a lot of people didn't know about that, so it was
Right.
just me. I just came across it and then I shared it. So I shared Olu's Instagram handle to this live. So I'm sure by the time we draw it goes up, when we are done, you guys can access his Instagram handle. So follow him. Olu always shares the updates, when things are happening. I also share it on my profile, and a whole lot of RCICs and even people who just blog about immigration share that. So just to so you're not missing out anything basically. So which other questions here? So I find this question interesting because this person says, can I get on board for occupation in demand with an online course? So because they are saying education must match experience, so will that online course suffice? So I'm thinking it doesn't suffice because you can't get evaluation for it.
Exactly, because it's not a degree you can evaluate, and
Yeah.
you need that evaluation to show the equivalency of your degree to a Canadian
Yeah,
education.
maybe if it was a full, but what if you do like a proper, maybe a master's or degree online? Will you be
Well,
able
it
to?
is something that you can evaluate because I'm aware some people have had those challenges that they send their transcript to some, educational credential assessment organizations and they reject it and
Yeah,
say
because it's
it's not
online.
a program, it's this and that. So if you can get an evaluation for it, then you'll be able to prove that you have related educational background to that.
This question looks like a very old question that I've answered before, but again, is credential evaluation required for just the highest degree?
If you have a master's and a PhD, you're better off just doing the highest because it saves you the cost of getting a transcript.
Mm-hmm.
But if what you have is two or more degrees, and two or more degrees is someone has a bachelor's degree and they have another diploma, for you to get the points that is more than just a bachelor's degree, you advise to do both. Or people that have, like, maybe they did national diploma and then did direct entry to university to do bachelor's degree, it's better for you because what you have is not a master's degree yet. So you can evaluate the two degrees so that you can get the point that is higher than a bachelor's degree alone.
Mine is a request. Thanks for all the effort. Please, can you both help with a job plan, just like you do with the studies? Oh, okay. So unfortunately, I am not able to. Aside from what I share publicly or
Right.
what you shares, we're not able to offer this personal service. Again, I did not do a disclaimer when we started this session. I am not a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, and Olu, as I speak for
I'm not.
yourself.
I'm also not a regulated. I'm not a licensed
Exactly.
consultant. I even
Exactly.
tell people everything you need from me is on my website.
Yes.
I put
Yes.
information. You don't even have to DM me. Like, there's
Exactly.
nothing I want to tell you privately. I just don't
That is
entertain
not in
it
the open.
because that is not in the open.
Yeah.
Anything I
So
have for you, once I come across it, I put it out there. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Check my website,
yeah.
www.olufemiloye.ca. You see those information out
Yeah.
there.
So we're just doing this because it's something we're passionate about. Canada has blessed my life. I'm sure it has blessed Olu's life. And we want you
Right.
guys also to partake in the blessing. So whatever I do is just because I enjoy it and I want people to be blessed as well, right? But
Right.
if you guys need one-on-one services without like getting a job, visa, immigration, you guys can contact regulated Canadian immigration consultant. Olu shared on his page. I don't know if it was 2 days ago or so,
I
like
think it was
recently.
yesterday or so. Yeah. A
He
list of
shared.
like some
Yes,
consultants.
and I saw the list. They are really good. I mean, they are more than that, but for the
Right.
ones that we know, right? So you guys can reach out to them for those kind of services. So I will go to another question. Yeah, I think we've answered all these ones. So some of them are repeating their questions. Maybe they were thinking we won't get to them. Um, Okay, so all these other questions are very specific, so I don't want to go into them. People are saying, what would you advise a health worker to go for? Which province? So again, like Olu says, just go and search for occupation in demand in different provinces, and then you would know which province your occupation would go for.
Mhm.
Dear Olu, with overall 6.5. Olu, can you see the list of the question from your end?
Yes, I can.
Okay, in case there's anyone you want to take, because I think I'm getting to the end. I'm just skipping a lot because
The only one I can see here it's related to education, though, like studying in Canada. Do you want me to take that?
oh yeah, that's
The
fine.
person is asking if they can I change my course upon arrival in Canada?
Yeah, the questions are too much. I don't even know. Oh,
So
okay. You can take. You can.
the answer to that is yes, but there are requirements that you must meet when you're changing your course. If you do a Google search of change DLI are designated learning institution, change DLI Canada, you see the requirement. But Canada allows you upon arrival in the country to change your course. One of the proactive things you want to do would be maybe getting the other admission before you even come in, so that
Yeah.
there's no break in transmission. Because
Mhm.
generally, you must remain enrolled as of the time you're changing your program. So if you come in January and you want to change to September, and you think you can just stay out of school from January to September, you're already violating your visit terms. So those are the things to take note of.
Yeah. I don't think there's any other question here that um. So when couples apply individually, do they need separate settlement funds? Why would couples apply? Why do you want to apply individually as a couple?
That's
If
a
you're
good.
a couple, you apply, I mean, in one application, right? So
You're
what
adding
do you
each other
provide?
so that you can pool funds together, and even your proof of fund as a couple together is lower for express entry, for instance, than
Yeah,
individually. I think
exactly. Yes.
for two couples, let me check quickly so that I'm not quoting the wrong number. For
Mhm.
two couples right now, husband and wife is 16,570.
Mhm.
Compared to individually is 13,310. So if you're doing
Yeah.
individually and you look at that fund, that's 26,000 something already
Mhm.
instead of like 16,000. So
So this person says, how long must your friend have stayed in Manitoba to be able to recommend you for nomination?
I think
Hmm.
they expect them to have stayed for 1 year, be
Oh.
able to show that in the last 1 year they've lived in that province. Double check that. I'm very sure of that for Saskatchewan, because they require that, but I think it's the same thing for Manitoba. You can
Hmm.
always double check on their provincial website so that you are sure.
Hmm.
That's all.
And also, what's the frequency of? So, for example, if I stay in Manitoba, can I nominate like more than one friend at per time?
They also have those requirements. So on the numbers of family members you can support. And as part of that, they also have to be able to show that the people they've supported in the past have remained in the province.
Oh, hmm.
You
Oh,
understand?
wow.
So those requirements are clearly spelled out on the provincial website.
Hmm. So this will probably be the okay. So this will probably be the last question that we'll take here, and then I would allow Olu to just give like his closing word on or advice regarding this pathway. How
Also,
long do you have to stay in a province that nominates you? I'm sure you've answered this before.
we mentioned that in the beginning. Generally, you're required to remain in that province until you're eligible for citizenship. So if you're coming in directly from outside Canada, that's about 3 years of accumulated stay in that province. Once you're eligible to apply for citizenship, you can, decide to leave. In some extreme cases, people may be eligible to leave that province before then if they have strong reasons to leave the province. But generally, I advise people follow the process that involves in the particular province, like letting the province know so it doesn't look as if you just left them, you absconded and all that. But generally, on a general note, you are required to remain in that province until you are eligible for citizenship.
Okay, guys, please, for every other question that is coming up, you guys should, I think you have to replay and watch. I guess you guys came late. Somebody's asking how is the proof of fund calculated. You don't have to calculate it. It's already there on IRCC website. And if
Right.
it's for provincial nomination, I'm sure it will also be there, right? So you just have
And
to
most
check.
of them use the same thing like express entry proof of fund. So that's
Mm-hmm.
it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let me just show this person. I don't know why he keeps asking this question. Can a couple have different specialties, e.g., tech and medicine, apply separately for Saskatchewan provincial nomination?
If you're
So
doing
that means
express
we
entry
have two
form,
application.
they have two different applications. It's possible there's nothing against that.
Mm-hmm.
One person will just be the dependent for the other person. If they are both eligible and they nominate one person first, then you probably have to withdraw the second
Mm-hmm.
one. So
Yeah.
there's nothing that says as a couple you
Yeah.
can, as long as you both meet the requirement and you have the necessary documents to do that as well.
Hmm. Okay, so thank you so much, Solu. So what are you going to say to everybody here?
I mean,
Just
if you missed any part
regarding
of
this
the session,
pathway.
it's recorded. It will be on Mrs. O's YouTube page. You can always go back and watch it. We've been speaking in the last 1 hour or more. The general advice I give to people, when you're coming to Canada, there are three P's involved. You have to plan, plan, plan. I am a big fan of that, planning ahead, knowing your options, knowing what you have to do. You have to follow the due process. Please, this is very, very important. People do all sorts of things and they advise you just do this, do that, especially like unregulated Canadian immigration agents from like your home country that would say just fake your proof of fund. Please don't do that because at the end of the day, you will be the one to bear the consequences of your action.
Yeah.
Second P is follow the due process. The last one is be patient. A lot of these things you see as we've outlined today, there are several factors involved. So it's not
Yeah.
so Canada is not the country you wake up on Monday and say, I want to be in Canada by Friday, except you already have your visa.
Yeah.
Quite procedural. You may, so for some people, the processing time may be longer. For some people, It may be shorter. They may go into the pool and nominate you. For others, you have to seek nomination yourself. You have to follow those things patiently. And if you are ready to do those things and stay positive about things, we look forward to having you in Canada. Thank you.
All right, guys, thank you for coming on here. And like I said, I'll be having one session every month. So this is the session for January. And thank you, Olu, for coming here. And for everybody that is here, hopefully the next session we're going to be talking about caregiver, how to come in, because I get a lot of those kind of questions. So I've invited an RCIC to come in with us, and let's see how it goes. If Olu is able to join us, but if not, that's fine. We're not going to be dragging him all the time. So you guys follow Olude. His link is on the description of this YouTube video, because he shares a lot of information that you would find useful. Thank you so much, and I'm going to end this session now.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.